Perhaps there are more people within the church struggling with these problems than even I realized. I had never dreamed that my own experience might be something anybody else could relate to, and I was wrong.
I gotta tell them there is no other kind of solution but Jesus Christ. That's the only one that changed my life. So I tell them, hey, Jesus could do the difference in your life because it's my responsibility.
Hi, I'm Laverne Tripp, and welcome to Born to Be Free. This is the beginning. You say, well, I thought this was the last one. No, the title of this week is The Awakening, because something wonderful has happened to us, and actually, this is the beginning of our life, not the ending. You're going to see in the next few minutes how some people have taken what's been given to them and how they're giving it to others. And I know that's what you're wanting to know. How do I take what's been given to me and give it to others? We believe that you're going to get an idea during this program that's going to help change the world, because we were born to be free.
Let's talk a little bit about where we are and what God is doing in our lives at this moment, and maybe a little bit about where you've come from. Constance.
Well, it's a very similar story to Joe's. You know, I went through 12 years of chronic dieting and weight obsession, binging, purging, you name it, with disordered eating. And sure enough, He uses our weaknesses to be made strong. And that area that I was so weak in and that I struggled with for so many years, I now have the privilege. I just released a book in April that talks about not just disordered eating, but chronic dieting and the gray area of allowing our image and our weight to become what defines who we are. And so I'm in the process. I've got a website that people can go to and learn more about whether maybe they struggle in these areas. And now this upcoming few years, I plan to be out speaking to colleges and churches and Christian audiences, non-Christian audiences, sharing a message that if our identity is attached to anything, including our weight or food, that we will end up being entrapped, if you will, in a lifestyle that does not bring true happiness.
End up on the scrap heap, which is kind of what our set has been indicative of.
Right.
Annie?
Well, went through a 20-year plus addiction, abuse and use of over-the-counter drugs, marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, and eventually a 5-year crack addiction. And I entered a treatment program in December of 1999 through Peniel Drug and Alcohol Rehabilitation Center. And Peniel is found in Genesis, and it is the specific chapter where Jacob comes face to face with God, and that's what I did in this program, Christian-based program that literally saved my life and changed my life. I'm a single mother. I work a 9-to-5 job in a local hospital, which I'm very proud of. I'm no longer a victim, but I function in society like millions of other people. And I'm very grateful to God for that. Currently I'm taking some classes at a local college, and I'm just content to be active in our church ministries and to be the mother that God called me to be. It's more than I ever thought I deserved or was ever capable of doing. But God saw something. God knew something, and He had a purpose for my life. And He has enabled me to do so. And I'm just so grateful today. I'm so grateful for where He's brought me from.
Thank you. I was a pastor. You would probably call me a successful pastor. but I was so cotton-picking religious. And in preparation to be a fifth-step listener for our local hospital that was becoming a regional health center, God convicted me and let me know that I was using Him like other people were using drugs. I was using Him for my highs, for my identity. And He said, I want to be your identity, but more than that, I want to be your Lord. And He began to take me apart and rebuild me. I didn't lose my church. I resigned. I resigned my denomination, not because I had done anything horrible, but because He was taking me down a different path. That path has been so awesome. I tell people, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but that's God's doing, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that He has put in my heart a passion to bring His church to a place where we can receive people who are broken and hurting. And we can be the hand of God to touch them and bring life and hope to them. How He does that is completely up to Him.
Well, if you had told me 20 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, of course I would have laughed. I was involved in so much overt sexual sin. Addicted to pornography, engaging in sex with a variety of partners, and involved in sexual perversions. Today, I've got the honor of working as a full-time counselor in Orange County, California. I also direct a monthly seminar for New Life Ministries called Every Man's Battle. So for me, it's been a real joy to see how God has taken the very worst part of my life and actually through that has helped prepare me for the work that I enjoy more than anything I've done in my life.
Grace is kind of amazing, isn't it?
More than amazing, yes. Like many people who got involved in sexual sin, I learned how to lie, I learned how to cover up, I learned how to sneak around. I began taking LSD by the time I was 12. I was routinely using methadone, marijuana, hashish, barbiturates just to get me through school. I was routinely engaging in sexual encounters with both adult men and with teenage girls, none of which my parents were aware of. God interrupted my life when I was 16, and He interrupted it through a beautiful young girl who asked me out to a backward dance. And after she asked me out to that dance, I asked her out for future dates, and she said, yes, but I'd like you to go to a Bible study with me. Well, I would have gone to a sewing circle meeting with her. And so I went and for the first time heard a very clear presentation of the gospel, and I was pricked to the core. I was very aware of my own sin. And as a result of the early experiences I had had in Sunday school, somehow that gospel presentation made sense. So finally, during one lunch break at school, I went across the street to the park and in essence gave up and prayed very specifically, Lord, I do know you're there. If you are still willing to receive me, I am finally willing to give this up to you. And it was at that moment that I was born again. And that, of course, was the beginning of a whole new life for me. Now, I expected, though, that having come to Christ, I would no longer feel sexual desires, sexual temptations. After all, I was doing all the right things. So many Christians were testifying about many sins that they had overcome, but nobody was talking about sex. Nobody talked about having been involved in sexual sin. Nobody openly discussed sexual temptation. Nobody talked about overcoming sexual sin. And so I assumed that within the church, all other believers had reached a point at which they had no sexual conflicts. I was the only one. And I thought, well, I'll be darned if I'm going to be the only freak in the congregation. And so I, in essence, pretended that I, too, had no struggle with sexual temptation. And that was the beginning of a downhill slide. When I repented in 1984, I wanted to be a righteous man. Nothing more, a righteous man. And so when I went into therapy, when I began attending church again, when I began letting God build me up again and take authority over my life, my highest hope was to live a godly life until either I died or the Lord came again. Until I heard about this one place, a little Christian organization that was counseling homosexuals and people who were involved in pornography. And I said, no way, because I had already been through my own therapy. I had left all of that behind. I was so happy with the way my life was developing. I didn't even want to think about that stuff anymore, much less deal with it at a professional level. But since there was no other place I could get an internship, I said, well, I'll do that for 3 months. Fulfill my basic practicum requirements and move on. Well, when I began working for that organization, my clientele shot up to 25 to 30 within just a few weeks. And I began to realize, my gosh, perhaps there are more people within the church struggling with these problems than even I realized. And over the next few months, I began to feel a real desire to take some of what I had learned about myself and put it to good use. I had never dreamed that my own experience might be something anybody else could relate to. And I was wrong. So that was the beginning of a realization that God was calling me to speak to the people who were involved in sexual sin, to speak to the people who wanted out of sexual sin, and to speak to the church about the problem of sexual sin. And that's a calling that I've pursued since then and which I've come to love.
Have you always wanted to do something that you knew would make an eternal difference in someone's life, but you felt like that you couldn't because you wasn't good enough? Well, do you know that's why we're here? You see, we found the solution. We have found the answer, and we're here to share it with you because in giving it, we receive it. The Bible says what we make happen for others, God will make happen for us. The Bible says what you sow, you will reap. And something wonderful happened to me. I was bound by drugs and alcohol for years. I tried to stop, I tried to quit, and I couldn't. But through working these biblical principles that we've been sharing with you every week, and if you've missed any of them, you want to get the little package. They'll tell you about it at the end of this program. And it's important that you get it. It's important that you practice it daily. Something wonderful will happen. You will get freed from that bondage and that addiction. And then the way to keep it is to give it away. Because what we sow, we will reap. It's important. The last thing Jesus told his disciples was, go into all the world and preach the good news to every person. Now, how are we going to be saved? How are people going to be saved unless they hear? How are they going to hear without a preacher? And how are they going to go preach unless they be sent? Well, first of all, let's define what a preacher is. A preacher is one that brings good news. It's not somebody standing in the pulpit and you write a check and pay them. That's a preacher. But every one of us qualify to bring good news. You can't give something that you don't have. But if you have worked these biblical principles in your life, if you've been practicing what we've been telling you and teaching you to do, and we're not just telling you what to do, we're telling you what we've done. I don't tell anybody what to do anymore. I tell you what I've done, and I know it works because I've done it. I'm a free man today, not because I'm good, but because God is. And now that I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of working this program, as a result of being obedient to what God has said do, not perfect, but making progress, then I'm here to share with you the good news. And God wants you to take the good news that's happening in your life and share it with others. No one can tell your story like you can, and it's your story. Have you been healed? Have you been delivered? Have you been set free? Have you found life? Then go give it to others. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't just be a river receiving it in and never flowing out. That's the reason the Dead Sea is the Dead Sea. It's constantly receiving and never giving. If you want to live, let it come in and let it go out. Take what's been given to you and give it to others.
Part of your job is to tell your story. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony. So what's your story, and what is God calling you and putting an excitement in your heart to do?
Amen.
John.
8 years ago, I was sitting in front of a slot machine. I had urinated in my pants because I didn't want to get up and go to the bathroom. I was afraid somebody would take my machine, and the machine was hot. About 30 minutes later, I had not eaten or taken my medication, and I fell off of the chair from weakness, and I thought I had a heart attack. And I remember people stepping over me to sit up there and play my unused credits on the slot machine. And now, Sunday, I preached at 2 churches in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I had 2 churches. I'm a full-time pastor in the United Methodist Church. Cannot even start to tell you how God worked that out. He just opened the doors. I kept telling them, but you people don't understand what I've come out of. And they would say, yeah, we do. And we want you to be preaching. And the guy asked, one guy said, did God call you? And I said, I don't know. But it could have been the wrong number for all I know. But I think he really wants me to preach, you know. Because to me, it was like God said, I'm going to take the mess of your life and give you a message.
Yep.
And that's what happened. And I'm thankful.
And that's what he's about.
Amen.
Going from a mess to a message.
Amen.
Okay, Mark?
Well, I'm a physician. I work in Buffalo, New York, and by the grace of God and with a little more postgraduate education, I've learned a little bit more about how to take care of people. And my fervent prayers these days are that I be granted more strength to do so. And you know, the prayer that I love is from a book that I read a lot. It's a St. Francis prayer about helping others, and it's asking God to make me a channel of his peace. And my favorite part in it is that I might seek to understand rather than to be understood, to comfort rather than to be comforted, and to love rather than to be loved. And it turns out that that's the answer to my selfishness and the self-centered lifestyle that I led for so many years, and that addiction finally took a hold of and rode me right to the ground. That if I am true to ask God for the help and the strength and the courage to help others, that I can be relieved of the bondage of selfishness. Mm-hmm. And it's an abundant life.
You know, you were talking about Joe Martin. He's a fabulous recovering Catholic priest who, I don't know if Joe's still alive or not, but he probably made every training film that I learned from. Mm-hmm. But he said the answer was very simple. Trust God, clean house, talking about this house in here, and help others.
Help others.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Amen.
Trust God, clean house, and help others.
And that's what this last principle is.
Yeah. Amen. Help others.
We're taking our story of hope. There are people out there that say, oh man, I've done too much.
Oh.
Wrong-o.
Right.
Amen.
I've gone too far. No. Because God saw this day when he called you.
Amen.
It is never too late, and we've never gone too far. And that is an amazing grace in itself.
Oh. You know, my own recovery process began one January night in 1984 after watching a show just like this. I saw a group of Christians talking honestly about their life issues and problems and how God had worked through those problems in their lives. And when the show was over, I turned off the TV and repented. And it was that night that my journey began. So I hope tonight, after watching this, that all of our listeners will take just a couple of moments after they turn off the TV to ask God 3 things. How can I draw closer to you? What do you want from me? And what, if anything, am I doing that's keeping that from happening? Very simple questions. The answers are life-changing.
I grew up in Bronx, New York. Then I lived in Manhattan. After I was there, my mother got involved with drugs and all that, and you know, when you're out there in the street, you know, in the get-go, you know, you do things you shouldn't do. So I was in gang related, I was in drug trafficking, I was involved in every kind of thing that had to do with streets. So I started making my own gang. So I made my gang, and I was very, very known out there in the street. They used to call me Mafia, and that was what they called me before. And as years passed, you know, I met my first wife. I was 12 years old, had my own apartment, I had my car, I had drug dealers and all that, and I started using crack. I got real involved, and after the crack, I started going down in everything. I started losing everything, and then I started using heroin. It was very, very bad. I used to do at least 36 bags daily of heroin and crack, you know, because every time the heroin used to just drive me. I went to 3 overdose, you know, and I used to live under the George Washington Bridge. I lived there for almost 7 months, and came to it one night. I said, I'm tired of this, so I was gonna suicide. You know, I said, no more. I'm you know, I said, nah, not even Jesus can help me. So I went out to the edge of the building. It was like 12 midnight or so, and I looked down, and it was like a voice telling me, jump, you ain't worth nothing. You're never gonna be anybody. You know, nobody loves you. And I remember I laid down, and I said, Jesus, if you really exist, help me. And, you know, I'll give you an opportunity, you know. How do I come to you? I want you to change my life. Right now, I'm working on opening a building for men's first and then for females, which is gonna be a Christian-based rehab center. I got to tell them. I got to tell them that there is a Lord that changes the life. I got to tell them that there is a Jesus of new opportunities. I got to tell them there is no other kind of solution but Jesus Christ. That's the only one that changed my life. And every time I see somebody in the street, I see one of these youngsters, I tell them, hey, Jesus could do the difference in your life. And I start talking to them and all that, you know, because it's my responsibility.
Well, now we know the reason why. Why does God want us to be free? Because we were born for that purpose. And the purpose was, after we get free, to set others free. I know you know people that have received something from God, and we all have. We've received His grace, we've received His mercy, we've received His love, we've received His power. But what do? Sit back in the church pews and do nothing. Because we think that's what we're supposed to do. Wrong. We were set free to set others free. Now we know that. We've had an awakening, a spiritual awakening. Our spirit has come alive, and the purpose is to give life to others. God promised the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead would quicken our mortal bodies. For what purpose? For our getting high? For our thrill? For our excitement? No, to give it to others. It is more blessed to give than receive. So if you've forgotten some of the things that we've been through, if you've forgotten some of the concepts, if you've forgotten the basics, you need to get the package that we're going to tell you about in just a little bit. Because this is not the ending, this is the beginning. Because if you will give what's been given to you, and by the way, you can't give something you don't have. So if you didn't get it, get the package and get it. If you've got it, start giving it away. Help others to come alive, and we'll live in a world that God intended for us to live in. Because the truth is, we were born to be free.
Have you been inspired to start your journey to recovery? Please call our toll-free number, 888-665-4483, and our prayer partners can help you find a group in your area. Or you can visit our website at www.ctvn.org and click on the Born to Be Free link. There you can search our online database of recovery groups near you. When you call or visit our website, request your free copy of the self-help booklet, Your Dynamic Journey to Freedom. In it, you'll find an outline of the recovery process featured in this series. So take that first step on your journey to freedom by contacting us, finding a local recovery group, and getting your free copy of this inspiring booklet. Call now, because you were born to be free.
Well, the cost is astronomical. There's billions of dollars spent on the war on drugs.
I don't think we have a clue of the devastation that addiction brings within families.
Something's not right. I don't know what it is, but something is not right. Something is missing in me.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. I once was bound, but now I'm free. In a solitary cell, a prisoner is held, sentenced to a life he can't escape. Regrets consume his mind, a captive now to time. He dies a little more every day. He is our brother, despite the wrong he's done. And blessed are the feet that bring in Jesus' love. Set the captive